There are losses more painful than dying. Not the kind that comes with funerals or flowers or people checking in on you, but the quiet ones that don't get acknowledged because technically, everything is still there. The person is still alive. The relationship still exists. The house is still standing. You're still breathing. And yet something essential is gone. And no one teaches you how to grieve that. It's the loss of what could have been. The loss of the version of life you kept adjusting your expectations for. The loss of safety, trust, innocence, or closeness that once felt normal and now feels unreachable. You wake up one day and realize you're not the same person you used to be. Not because you chose to change, but because something happened that rearranged you inside. You still function. You still smile when you're supposed to. You still show up. But there's a quiet heaviness that follows you around, especially in moments when you're alone and don't have to perform being okay. Some losses hurt more because there's no clear ending, no final goodbye, no closure, just distance that slowly grew, silence that replaced conversations, love that turned into caution, dreams that didn't collapse dramatically but slowly faded till you stopped mentioning them out loud. And when people ask how you're doing, you say fine, because explaining the truth would take too long and feel too vulnerable. You didn't lose a person. You lost how they used to look at you. You didn't lose your faith. You lost the simplicity of trusting without fear. You didn't lose your life. You lost the version of yourself who felt lighter, more hopeful, less guarded. Those losses are confusing because you feel like you should be over them by now. Time has passed. Life has moved on. Other people seem fine. So you wonder what's wrong with you. Why certain memories still sting. Why certain songs still hit too hard. Why certain places make your chest tighten for reasons you can't explain. The truth is, some losses don't hurt because they ended. They hurt because they changed you. They taught you to brace instead of relax, to expect disappointment, to stay alert even in moments that are supposed to feel safe. And that kind of loss doesn't announce itself. It just quietly rewires how you move through the world. Scripture understands this kind of grief. There were people who watched Jesus die and thought the story was over. Not just because he was gone, but because everything they hoped for seemed buried with him. Their grief wasn't only about death. It was about shattered expectations, about futures they had already pictured and now had to let go of. They walked home confused, heavy, trying to make sense of a loss that felt bigger than words. God does not dismiss this kind of pain just because it's invisible. He sees the things you lost that no one else noticed. The childhood you didn't get. The love that never became what it promised. The sense of belonging that slipped away quietly. He knows how it feels to grieve something while still having to keep going like nothing happened. Some losses are painful because you never got to say goodbye to who you were before it happened. Before the betrayal, before the burnout, before the disappointment that made you more cautious. You didn't choose to become harder. You became protective. And now you carry a quiet grief for the softness you lost along the way. God does not rush that grief. He doesn't tell you to move on, be stronger, or look on the bright side. In Scripture, Jesus stood at a grave knowing resurrection was coming. And still he wept. Not because death had the final word, but because loss still hurts. even when hope exists. That matters. Your pain doesn't become invalid just because healing is possible. There are losses that change how you trust, how you love, how you hope. Losses that don't end your life, but divide it into before and after. And pretending they didn't matter doesn't make them hurt less. It just makes the grief quieter and heavier. You may feel ashamed for still carrying this, for being affected by something that others think you should be over. But grief doesn't follow logic. It follows attachment. And you lost something that mattered deeply, even if no one else saw it clearly. God is close to this kind of loss, especially the kind that leaves you feeling unseen. He collects the tears you never explained. He stays near the parts of you that learn to survive instead of feel. He doesn't ask you to minimize what hurt you just to appear faithful. Healing doesn't mean forgetting what you lost. It means allowing God to meet you in the space it left behind. Loss creates emptiness, but emptiness is not the same as absence. In Scripture, God often worked most powerfully in places that felt barren, quiet, or abandoned. Resurrection came after silence. Restoration came after exile. New life emerged from places that looked finished. If you're carrying a loss that feels harder than death because it never fully ended, you're not weak. You're human. You loved. You hoped. You invested yourself. And those things don't disappear without leaving a mark. God is not asking you to erase your pain. He's asking you to stop carrying it alone, to let Him sit with you in the grief you never had permission to name, to trust that even losses that changed you can become places where compassion deepens, wisdom grows, and gentleness slowly returns. Some losses close doors, others open wounds, but none of them place you beyond God's reach. There are losses more painful than dying, and God sees every one of them.